Good evening, night owls, and welcome to Whisper Crowley. Tonight, I will guide you into a world of darkness, hoping to help you relax and unwind. Perhaps some of you will even drift into a haunting yet soothing sleep. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now we begin. Have you ever heard laughter where there should be none? The hum of industrial dryers and the rhythmic swoosh of brushes were sounds Miguel had grown accustomed to during his 3 months working the night shift at Starlight Express Car Wash on the outskirts of Amarillo, Texas. There was something almost meditative about the mechanical symphony that played through the quiet hours between midnight and 6 in the morning. Most nights, Miguel welcomed the predictable routine and solitude. It gave him time to think, to plan his next steps after community college. The facility was impressive by small-town standards, an 80-foot tunnel with automated washing systems, 3 vacuum stations, and a small office building where Miguel would retreat during downtime. The owner, Mr. Whitaker, had installed state-of-the-art equipment just last year, making Starlight Express the most modern car wash in the county. That night, a Tuesday in late October, brought an unusual chill to the air. Not the normal Texas autumn cool, but something that seemed to seep into Miguel's bones as he performed his routine maintenance checks. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered momentarily, casting strange shadows across the concrete floor. Just the weather, he muttered to himself, pulling his company jacket tighter around his shoulders. The forecast had mentioned thunderstorms, which explained the electricity fluctuations. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different tonight. At 2:15 in the morning, Miguel sat in the office, entering the day's accounting figures into the system. The small room offered a view of the entrance to the wash tunnel through a large window. Outside, the wind had picked up, scattering dead leaves across the empty parking lot. No customers had come through for over 3 hours, which wasn't unusual for a weeknight. The first unusual occurrence happened at 2:27. Miguel heard it clearly over the ambient noise of the machinery, a child's laugh, high-pitched and carefree, echoing from somewhere inside the tunnel. He froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The sound was unmistakable, not machinery, not the wind, but the delighted giggle of a young child. "Hello," he called out, rising from his chair. "Is someone there?" Silence answered him, punctuated only by the steady rhythm of the idle machinery. Miguel grabbed his flashlight from the drawer and stepped outside the office. The night air hit him like a physical force, colder than it had been just minutes before. His breath formed small clouds as he approached the entrance of the tunnel. "This is private property," he called out, trying to sound authoritative despite the tremor in his voice. "The car wash is closed. If anyone's in there, you need to leave now." The tunnel stretched before him, a cavern of shadows despite the dim safety lights that remained on throughout the night. The massive brushes hung motionless like sleeping giants. The conveyor belt that normally pulled vehicles through sat silent. That's when he heard it again, not one laugh this time, but several. Children laughing and whispering from somewhere deep in the tunnel. Miguel's rational mind offered explanations. Teenagers playing a prank, maybe homeless people seeking shelter from the coming storm, or perhaps just the wind playing tricks through the tunnel's unique acoustics. But some deeper instinct, something primordial and animal, told him that none of these explanations were correct. He stepped into the tunnel, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "I can hear you in there," he called, his voice echoing strangely. "Come out now." The laughter stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was absolute, heavier somehow than the mechanical quiet from before. Even the ambient noise of the idle machinery seemed muted, as if the entire building was holding its breath. 3 steps into the tunnel, Miguel felt it, a drop in temperature so sudden and severe that he gasped. His exhaled breath billowed around him like dense fog. It was easily 20 degrees colder here than outside, an impossible temperature gradient. The flashlight flickered, its beam weakening. Miguel tapped it against his palm, and the light stabilized momentarily before dimming again. "Stupid batteries," he muttered, the sound of his own voice oddly comforting in the silence. But he had replaced them just yesterday. 5 steps into the tunnel now. The safety lights overhead seemed dimmer, casting more shadows than illumination. The massive brushes hung like executed men, occasionally swaying slightly despite the complete absence of airflow inside the tunnel. Something moved at the edge of his vision. Miguel swung the flashlight toward it, heart hammering against his ribs. Nothing, just the automated soap dispensers mounted on the wall, their nozzles pointing accusingly into empty space. Another step and his boots splashed into a puddle. Strange, the drainage system should have removed all standing water hours ago. The liquid was dark, and for one horrible moment, Miguel thought it might be blood. The flashlight revealed it to be only water, but unusually cold, sending a chill through his boot. The laughter came again, louder now, from directly behind him. Miguel spun around, nearly losing his balance on the wet concrete. His flashlight beam sliced through empty air. The entrance to the tunnel just 6 steps away seemed impossibly distant now, the night outside a different world entirely. Something brushed against his ankle. He jumped back, swinging the light down in a frantic arc. Nothing visible at all. But as he turned to make a hasty retreat, the security camera mounted near the tunnel entrance caught his eye. Its small red recording light blinked steadily in the darkness. It would have recorded everything, Miguel thought. If there are kids in here playing games, it would have caught them entering. This thought gave him courage. He would retreat to the office, check the security footage, and if necessary, call the police. There was no need to play hero against unseen pranksters. As he backed toward the entrance, never taking his eyes off the depths of the tunnel, Miguel's flashlight illuminated something on the wet floor that sent ice through his veins. Small footprints, too small to belong to teenagers or adults, leading from the puddle deeper into the darkness of the tunnel. And they hadn't been there when he walked in. Miguel's hands trembled as he rewound the security footage. The office suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in around him. Outside, the wind had intensified, whistling through the small gaps in the windows and creating an eerie, keening sound that set his teeth on edge. "Just kids," he repeated to himself like a mantra. Just some neighborhood kids messing around. The security system was new, installed only 3 months ago after a series of break-ins at businesses along the highway. 4 cameras covered the car wash, one at the entrance, one at the exit, one inside the tunnel, and one overlooking the vacuum stations. Miguel navigated to the tunnel camera feed and rewound to 2:15, just before he had heard the first laugh. The footage was grainy but clear enough. The empty tunnel, machinery idle, safety lights casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Nothing moved except the occasional drip of water from the ceiling fixtures. Miguel fast-forwarded slightly, watching the timestamp carefully. 2:27. The moment he had heard the first laugh. Nothing changed on the screen. The tunnel remained empty. That can't be right, Miguel muttered, rewinding and playing it again. Same result, an empty tunnel. He switched to the entrance camera. 2:15 through 2:30 showed no one entering the tunnel. Not kids, not teenagers, not anyone. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead as he switched back to the tunnel camera and continued watching. There at 2:31 he saw himself enter the tunnel, flashlight in hand, calling out. He watched his recorded self take cautious steps into the darkness, stopping suddenly near the first set of brushes, then backing away quickly toward the entrance. But that wasn't what made Miguel's blood turn to ice in his veins. Behind his retreating figure, barely visible in the dim light, shadows moved across the floor. Not the natural shadows cast by his flashlight or the safety lights overhead. These moved independently, flowing like dark water across the concrete. 3 distinct shapes, small and human-like, gliding just beyond the range of his flashlight beam. "No," Miguel whispered, pressing his face closer to the monitor. "That's not possible." He rewound and played it again at half speed. There was no mistaking it. As he backed out of the tunnel, 3 shadowy figures moved in the darkness behind him. They seemed to be following some feet behind, stopping when he stopped, moving when he moved. The shapes were roughly the size of children, but too dark and amorphous to make out any details. Miguel's mouth went dry. He had been alone in that tunnel. He would have seen anyone else there, even in the dim light. Yet the camera had captured something his eyes had missed. The office phone rang, shrill and sudden, causing Miguel to knock over his coffee mug. Black liquid spread across the desk as he stared at the phone. No one ever called the car wash at this hour. He hesitated, then picked up the receiver. "Starlight Express Car Wash, this is Miguel." Static crackled on the line, a white noise hissed that ebbed and flowed like ocean waves. Beneath it, almost imperceptibly, he could hear whispering. Multiple voices, too quiet and overlapped to make out individual words. "Hello," Miguel said louder now. "Who is this?" The whispering intensified, and then, cutting through the static with crystal clarity, a child's voice said, "Come play with us, Miguel." His name. They had said his name. Miguel slammed the receiver down, heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. The lights in the office flickered, dimming momentarily before returning to full brightness. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket. With shaking hands, he pulled it out. No service, not a single bar of reception. Yet there on the screen was a text notification from an unknown number. "We're waiting for you in the tunnel, Miguel." "This isn't happening," he said aloud, his voice sounding hollow in the small room. This is some kind of joke. The rational part of his brain scrambled for explanations. Someone was pranking him, maybe Jason from the day shift, who had always been jealous that Miguel got the higher-paying night position. Or perhaps Mr. Whitaker himself, testing Miguel's courage and commitment to the job. But deep down, he knew these explanations couldn't account for what he had seen on the security footage. or the footprints on the tunnel floor that appeared from nowhere. Miguel glanced at the clock, 3:15. Less than 3 hours until dawn, when Ray would arrive to take over the morning shift. He just needed to wait it out, stay in the office, keep the door locked. A loud bang from outside made him jump. It sounded like a car door slamming. Miguel moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. The parking lot had been empty moments ago, but now a vehicle sat near the tunnel entrance, an old station wagon, its paint faded to an indeterminate color in the dim lot lights. He couldn't see anyone inside or around it. His first thought was relief. Customers meant he wasn't alone anymore. But then confusion set in. The car wash wasn't open for business at this hour, and there had been no headlights, no sound of an engine. The car had simply appeared. As he watched, the station wagon rolled forward slowly, approaching the tunnel entrance. No headlights, no sign of a driver. It moved with deliberate purpose, like a toy being pulled by an invisible string. The phone rang again. Miguel ignored it this time, eyes fixed on the station wagon as it reached the tunnel entrance and stopped, as if waiting for the automated system to pull it in. Without thinking about what he was doing, Miguel reached over and pressed the button that activated the tunnel machinery. The car wash rumbled to life, conveyor belt moving, water pumps engaging, massive brushes beginning their rhythmic dance. The station wagon rolled into the tunnel and disappeared from view. Miguel returned to the security monitors, switching to the inside tunnel camera. The station wagon moved through the wash cycle, water spraying across its surface, brushes caressing its sides. But something was wrong with the image. The camera seemed to be malfunctioning, the picture distorting and pixelating around the vehicle. And then he saw them. Inside the station wagon, visible through the windows as water cascaded down the glass, faces. Not of adults, but children. At least 5 of them, their features indistinct through the soapy water, but unmistakably pressing against the windows, looking out at the camera. Looking at him. As the vehicle passed under the dryers and approached the exit, Miguel switched to the exit camera. The station wagon emerged from the tunnel, water still beating on its surface, and rolled to a stop. For several seconds it sat motionless under the lot lights. Then slowly the rear passenger door opened. Miguel couldn't tear his eyes away from the monitor as a small figure stepped out. A child, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, wearing what appeared to be old-fashioned clothes, though it was difficult to make out details in the grainy footage. The child stood beside the car for a moment, then turned its face directly toward the camera. The image distorted violently, breaking into digital artifacts and static. When it cleared seconds later, both the child and the station wagon were gone. The machinery continued to run, the tunnel fully activated now. Water sprayed and brushes turned, washing nothing but empty air. The conveyor belt moved steadily, carrying no vehicles through its cycle. Miguel's phone vibrated again. Another text from the unknown number. We're clean now. Your turn to get wet, Miguel. As if responding to the message, the office lights went out, plunging him into darkness broken only by the glow of the security monitors. And from the tunnel came the sound of children's laughter, rising above the roar of the machinery. The backup generator kicked in 30 seconds after the power outage, bathing the office in the dull red glow of emergency lighting. Miguel stood frozen beside the security monitors, his breath creating small clouds in the suddenly frigid air. The main power was out, but somehow the security system remained operational, its screens the only source of normal light in the room. His phone was dead now. Not low battery, not no service, completely dead. The screen wouldn't even light up when he pressed the power button. Outside, the storm had intensified, rain lashing against the windows in horizontal sheets. No one would come to the car wash in this weather, even after dawn. Miguel was truly alone. Except he wasn't alone at all, was he? On the security monitor, the tunnel machinery continued to operate despite the power outage, an impossibility that Miguel's mind couldn't begin to process. Water sprayed, brushes rotated, and the conveyor belt moved steadily through its cycle. And now small dark shapes darted between the equipment, moving too quickly for the camera to capture clearly. Miguel's options were limited. He could stay in the office, hope the phone lines came back up, and wait for Ray to arrive at 6. But that was almost 3 hours away, and something told him the entities in the tunnel, whatever they were, wouldn't wait that long. They were becoming bolder, their presence stronger. Or he could try to make a run for it. His car was parked just outside, no more than 20 feet from the office door. If he could reach it, he could drive away from this nightmare. But to get there, he'd have to cross open ground, exposed to whatever was out there. A third option formed in his mind, confront whatever was in the tunnel. Face it directly. Maybe there was a rational explanation after all. Maybe. The walkie-talkie on the desk, used for communication between staff members when they were at opposite ends of the facility, crackled to life. Static burst from the speaker, followed by a child's voice, distorted but recognizable. Miguel, we're waiting. Come see. Another voice joined the first, slightly higher pitched. We've been here so long. So lonely, a third voice, barely a whisper. We died here, Miguel. Won't you come die with us? The walkie-talkie fell silent. Miguel realized he had backed up against the wall, as far from the device as the small office would allow. They died here. That's impossible, he thought. This place was built only 3 years ago. Before that, it was just an empty lot. But as the thought formed, another part of his mind supplied the information he had forgotten until now. Before Starlight Express, another car wash had occupied this site in the 80s and 90s, an older manual operation called Sunshine Wash that had gone out of business decades ago. Mr. Whitaker had mentioned it during Miguel's initial training. Had something happened here. Some accident involving children. The question came unbidden, why children? Why here? Movement on one of the monitors caught his eye. The camera overlooking the vacuum stations showed a small figure standing motionless in the rain. A child in outdated clothes, similar to the one he had seen exiting the station wagon. The child's head was lowered, face hidden, shoulders slumped in an attitude of profound sadness or exhaustion. As Miguel watched, the child slowly raised its head. The face that looked up at the camera wasn't human, not entirely. The features were blurred as if photographed in motion, but the eyes were crystal clear. Black without whites or pupils, and reflecting the light like pools of oil. The image pixelated suddenly, distorting the child's face into a digital smear. When it cleared seconds later, the vacuum area was empty. But now the office felt different, the air denser, the shadows in the corners deeper. Miguel wasn't alone anymore. He felt it before he saw it, a presence behind him, small but radiating a cold so intense it burned. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and his breath caught in his throat. Slowly fighting every instinct that screamed at him to run, Miguel turned around. A child stood in the corner of the office, partially hidden in shadow. A boy of perhaps 10, wearing clothes that might have been fashionable 30 years ago, jeans with cuffs, a striped shirt, sneakers with untied laces. His appearance flickered slightly, like a television with poor reception. "Hello, Miguel," the boy said, his voice echoing strangely, as if coming from the bottom of a well. "Will you come play with us now? We've been so bored for so long." Miguel's voice failed him. He tried to speak, but only a dry rasp emerged from his throat. The boy took a step forward, and the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Frost began to form on the windows. "There was an accident," the boy said conversationally, taking another step. "A long time ago. The old car washed. The chemicals weren't stored properly. 5 of us were playing hide and seek. We thought the storage room would be a good hiding place." His form flickered again. "We were wrong," Miguel found his voice at last. I'm sorry that happened to you. But I can't help you." The boy cocked his head to one side, an eerily adult gesture from such a young face. "But you can. You're the night manager. You have access to everything. You can let us go, let you go." How the boy's face changed, his features blurring into something less human. His eyes grew larger, darker. "By taking our place, Miguel." Miguel lunged for the door, fingers closing around the handle. It was ice cold, burning his skin on contact, but he yanked it open anyway and stumbled outside into the storm. The rain hit him like needles, immediately soaking through his clothes. The wind howled around him, so strong he had to lean into it to remain upright. Through the curtain of water he could see his car, a battered Honda Civic that had never looked so beautiful or so far away. He took one step toward it, then another. Movement caught his peripheral vision, small shapes emerging from the tunnel, from beneath cars in the lot, from the shadows of the vacuum stations. Children or things that looked like children, converging on him from all directions. Miguel abandoned stealth and ran, keys already in hand. 10 feet to the car. 5. His foot hit a slick patch of concrete, and he went down hard, keys flying from his grasp. Pain shot through his knee, but adrenaline pushed it aside as he scrambled back to his feet, frantically searching the wet ground for his keys. There, a glint of metal near a drain. He lunged for them, fingers closing around the key ring just as a small hand emerged from the drain itself, pale fingers reaching for the same prize. Miguel recoiled, scrambling backward on hands and knees. The hand withdrew into the drain, but not before he saw that the fingers were too long, the joints bent at unnatural angles. Somehow he made it to his car, hands shaking so badly he could barely insert the key into the lock. No remote entry on a 20-year-old Honda. He kept looking over his shoulder, expecting to see the children closing in, but the parking lot appeared empty now, just rain and darkness. Finally, the door opened. Miguel threw himself inside, pulled the door shut, and locked it manually. For a moment he simply sat there, water dripping from his hair and clothes, breath coming in ragged gasps. The car windows began to fog almost immediately from his body heat and humid breath. Miguel reached to start the engine to get the defroster running. The keys weren't in his hand. He patted his pockets, checked the floor, looked at the passenger seat. Nothing. The keys had vanished between the car door and the ignition. A soft giggle came from the back seat. Miguel froze, eyes locking on the rearview mirror. The back seat appeared empty in the dim light, but the sound had been unmistakable. Another giggle closer now, right next to his ear. "Found you," whispered a child's voice. Miguel lunged for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The locks, which he had just engaged, snapped down again when he tried to lift them. He was trapped. The air in the car grew colder. His breath formed clouds now, and frost patterns began to spread across the inside of the windows, beautiful and terrifying crystal structures forming before his eyes. In the fog on the rear window, a message appeared, as if written by an invisible finger. Come back to the tunnel outside. Through the icy windows, Miguel could see the car-wash tunnel glowing with an unnatural blue light. The emergency lights shouldn't have been that color. Nothing should have been that color. His options had dwindled to just one. Whatever these entities wanted, they weren't going to let him leave until they got it. The only way out was through. With trembling fingers, Miguel reached for the door handle again. This time it opened smoothly. The storm outside had calmed somewhat, the rain reduced to a gentle patter. He stepped out, closed the car door behind him, and faced the tunnel. 5 small figures stood at its entrance, silhouetted against the blue glow emanating from within. They were holding hands, forming a line across the opening. As one, they extended their free hands toward him, an invitation. Or a demand. Miguel took a deep breath, tasting ozone and something chemical on the back of his tongue. Then he walked toward them, each step feeling like he was moving through deep water. The children parted as he approached, creating an opening in their line. The blue glow from the tunnel intensified, becoming almost blinding. Miguel could feel its heat on his face, not warm but cold heat, burning in its intensity. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice sounding thin and small against the vastness that seemed to open before him. The children spoke in unison, their voices overlapping in a chorus that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "We want you to set us free." Miguel stepped into the tunnel, and the blue light swallowed him whole. The tunnel wasn't a tunnel anymore. Or rather, it was still physically the same car-wash tunnel Miguel had maintained for 3 months, but now it was something else as well. A corridor between worlds, perhaps, or a tear in the fabric of reality. The blue light surrounded him, not emanating from any particular source, but simply existing everywhere, casting no shadows. The machinery still ran, water sprayed, brushes turned, but they seemed insubstantial now, like projections or memories. The real substance was the light itself, and the 5 children who stood before him in a semicircle, their forms more solid and real than they had appeared before. 3 boys, 2 girls. Their clothes belonged to another era, the late 80s or early 90s, but they were immaculately clean and dry despite the water spraying all around. Their faces were clear now, no longer blurred or distorted. Normal children except for their eyes, all black, reflecting the blue light like polished obsidian. You're them, Miguel said. The children who died here. The tallest boy, perhaps 12, stepped forward. He seemed to be the lighter. We are. I'm Edward. This is my sister, June. He indicated a girl of about 10. And these are the Carlson siblings, Thomas, Michael, and Lily. Miguel's mind struggled to process the impossibility of the situation. He was talking to ghosts, actual ghosts, yet some analytical part of his brain was still functioning, still asking questions. You said there was an accident with chemicals, he said. What happened? Edward's expression darkened. It wasn't entirely an accident. Old man Jenkins, who owned Sunshine Wash back then, he stored industrial cleaning chemicals in an unlocked room at the back of the tunnel. Extremely toxic stuff that wasn't even legal to use. We were playing hide and seek, like I told you. Thomas hid in the chemical storage room. The smallest boy, who couldn't have been more than 6 when he died, looked down at his feet. When we couldn't find him after an hour, Edward continued, we started checking everywhere. June found him unconscious in the storage room. Some of the containers had leaked. The fumes he trailed off. June picked up the story. We tried to drag him out, but the room was so small and the fumes were so strong. We all passed out. By the time they found us the next morning, it was too late. Jenkins covered it up, said the middle boy, Michael. Made it look like we'd broken in after hours. Said it was our fault. Our parents couldn't afford good lawyers. Jenkins got off with a fine. He sold the property a year later. Lily, a girl of perhaps 8, spoke for the first time. We've been here ever since. Not always awake, but always here, watching people come and go. The old car wash was torn down. This new one built. But we're still trapped. Trapped by what? Miguel asked. If you died, shouldn't you have moved on? Gone to whatever comes next? Edward shook his head. We should have. But the chemicals that killed us, they did something else too. Something to our souls. Bound us here. We can't leave this property. We've tried. June stepped closer to Miguel. Up close, her eyes were even more disturbing, not just black, but containing shifting patterns within the darkness, like oil swirling on water. But you can help us, she said, her voice taking on a pleading tone. You're the night manager. You have access to what? Miguel asked, bewildered. I don't understand what you want me to do. The chemical storage room, Edward said. It's still here. That's impossible, Miguel protested. This entire building is new. There's no old storage room, Edward smiled sadly. There is. They built over it. Didn't even clear it out properly. Just sealed it up and poured the new foundation. Our bodies aren't there, those were found and buried. But the chemicals remain, and something of us clings to them. That's what's keeping us here. Miguel's mind raced. There was a small maintenance closet at the back of the tunnel that he had never paid much attention to, just a concrete alcove with a drain in the floor where they stored some cleaning supplies. Could there be something beneath it? As if reading his thoughts, Edward nodded. Yes, that's where it is. Under the floor. We need you to open it. Release what's left of the chemicals. Set us free, Miguel hesitated. If what they were saying was true, opening a sealed room containing 30-year-old industrial chemicals could be dangerous, potentially fatal. And could he trust them? These weren't just children, they were spirits, entities that had somehow maintained consciousness decades after death. What if they were lying? What if they wanted the chemicals released for some other, darker purpose? I don't know, he said. That sounds dangerous. I could call someone hazardous materials experts. They could handle it safely. The expressions on the children's faces changed simultaneously, hardening into something less human. The blue light surrounding them pulsed, growing brighter, colder. No, Edward said, his voice multi-layered now, as if multiple voices were speaking through him. It must be now. Tonight. By you, we've waited too long already, June added, her voice similarly altered. 32 years, 4 months, 17 days. Why me? Miguel demanded. Why tonight? Because you can see us, Lily said simply. Not everyone can. And because tonight is the anniversary. The veil is thin. It's now or wait another year. Miguel considered his options. He could refuse, but then what? Would they let him leave? Would they hurt him? Or could he pretend to agree, then make a run for it once they released him from the tunnel? Edward's next words eliminated that option. We can hear your thoughts, Miguel. We're inside your head now. There's no running from this. No escape. To demonstrate, all 5 children flickered and vanished, only to reappear surrounding Miguel in a tight circle, so close he could have touched them by simply extending his arms. You help us, Michael said, or you join us. Those are the choices. The blue light intensified again, becoming almost painful to look at. The water spraying from the car wash nozzles began to take on the same blue glow, as if the light was contaminating everything it touched. Okay, Miguel said finally. I'll help you. Show me what to do. The children stepped back, their expressions returning to something more human, more childlike. The oppressive quality of the blue light diminished somewhat. Edward pointed to the back of the tunnel. The maintenance closet. There's a false floor. Beneath it, you'll find the old access hatch to the chemical room. Open it. Miguel walked through the tunnel, the machinery parting before him like curtains, insubstantial as smoke. The children followed, a silent procession. At the back wall was the small maintenance closet, really just an alcove with shelving. Miguel had cleaned it dozens of times, never suspecting what might lie beneath. He began removing items from the shelves, bottles of industrial soap, waxes, polishes. When the shelves were clear, he knelt and examined the concrete floor. It looked ordinary, slightly stained from years of chemicals dripping onto it. But when he ran his fingers along the edges where the floor met the wall, he felt it, a slight seam, almost imperceptible. There's something here, he said. But I don't see how to open it. June pointed to a spot near the drain. There. The access point. Miguel looked closer. What he had always assumed was just an imperfection in the concrete was actually a small, recessed handle. He gripped it and pulled. Nothing happened at first. Then, with a grating sound of concrete against concrete, a section of the floor about 2 feet square began to move. Miguel pulled harder and the section came up, revealing a dark space beneath and the top of what looked like an old metal hatch. The smell that rose from the opening was chemical and organic at once, industrial solvents mixed with the sweet-sour odor of decay. Miguel recoiled, covering his nose and mouth with his shirt. "That's it," Edward said, his voice eager now. "Open the hatch." The metal hatch had a simple rotating handle, heavily rusted but still functional. Miguel grasped it, the metal cold and rough against his palm. He hesitated, looking back at the children. "What happens after I open this? What happens to you?" The five exchanged glances. It was Lily who answered. "We go free. Move on. Leave this place forever, and what happens to me?" None of them would meet his eyes now. Finally, Edward spoke. "The chemicals are still dangerous, Miguel. Even after all this time. When that hatch opens, you'll be exposed." "Wait, can't say what will happen to you." Miguel stood up. "So that's it. I die so you can go free." "You might not die," June said, but her voice lacked conviction. "And even if you do, is one life worth 5 souls finding peace after decades of torment?" It was a question without a good answer. Miguel looked at the expectant faces of the ghost children, then down at the hatch. If he refused, they might trap him here anyway, forcing him to join their limbo existence. If he agreed, he might die, but they would finally be released. Was that worth it? 5 children trapped for over 30 years. "There's no guarantee this will even work," he said. "What if I open it and nothing happens? What if you're still trapped?" "We'll know as soon as it opens," Edward said. "The chemicals are what bind us. Release them and you release us." Miguel took a deep breath. "Is there any other way? Any way I could open it safely?" The children shook their heads in unison. "The seal must be broken directly," Michael said. "The bindings are specific." Miguel thought of his life outside these walls. His mother, who depended on the money he sent home each month. His younger sister, just starting community college with dreams of becoming a nurse. His friends, his small apartment, the guitar he was learning to play. All the future moments he would miss. But then he looked at the children, trapped for decades in this liminal space, neither truly alive nor allowed to rest in death. 32 years of watching the world move on without them. Of seeing other children grow up, live their lives, while they remained frozen in time. "If I do this," Miguel said slowly, "I want you to promise me something." The children waited, their spectral forms flickering slightly in the blue light. "Find a way to let my family know what happened to me." Not the whole truth. They wouldn't believe it. But something. So they aren't left wondering forever. Edward nodded solemnly. "We promise. We can influence things somewhat, dreams, electronic devices. We'll find a way." Miguel knelt again by the hatch. His hands were steady now, his decision made. "Stand back," he told the children. Just in case, they retreated several steps, watching intently. Miguel grasped the rusted handle with both hands and, summoning all his strength, turned it counterclockwise. For a moment, it refused to budge. Then, with a shriek of metal against metal, it rotated a quarter turn. A hiss erupted from around the edges of the hatch, the sound of pressurized gases escaping confinement. The smell intensified, burning Miguel's nostrils and throat even through his makeshift mask. "Keep going," June urged. It's working. I can feel it already. Miguel turned the handle another quarter rotation. The hiss became a steady stream, and faint tendrils of blue-tinged vapor began to rise from the seam around the hatch. The vapors seemed to be drawn toward the children, curling around their forms like affectionate cats. One final turn, and the hatch mechanism released completely. The cover lifted slightly on its own, pushed up by the pressure from below. Miguel hesitated, then used the tips of his fingers to push it all the way open. The blue vapor erupted from the opening, not violently, but in a steady, purposeful stream. It was the same color as the light that filled the tunnel, and as it made contact with the ghost children, their forms began to change. The edges of their bodies, previously sharp and distinct, started to blur. Their eyes, once solid black, began to lighten. Miguel scrambled back from the hatch, but he wasn't quick enough. The vapor enveloped him, burning his skin, searing his lungs as he inadvertently inhaled. He fell to his knees, coughing violently. Through watering eyes, he watched the transformation of the children. They were glowing now, their forms becoming translucent, the blue light within them growing brighter. Their faces registered a mix of emotions, surprise, relief, joy, and something like gratitude as they looked at Miguel. "It's working," Edward said, his voice now sounding distant, as if coming from far away. "We're being released," the others nodded, their movements becoming fluid and ethereal. June stepped toward Miguel, her form leaving trails of light in the air behind her. "Thank you," she said simply. "We won't forget what you've done." The vapors continued to rise from the open hatch, swirling around the tunnel in complex patterns. Miguel's vision began to blur, his consciousness fading. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the 5 children, holding hands in a circle, their forms dissolving into pure light as they rose toward the ceiling of the tunnel and beyond. His last thought was a hope that they would keep their promise. Did you ever wonder if some sacrifices change more than one world? Ray Jenkins arrived for his morning shift at Starlight Express Car Wash at 5:45, 15 minutes earlier than scheduled. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean, the air fresh and crisp with that special clarity that follows heavy rain. The parking lot gleamed wetly in the pre-dawn light. He noticed Miguel's Honda still parked in its usual spot and frowned. Miguel never stayed past the end of his shift. He was always eager to get home and catch some sleep before his afternoon classes. The first oddity Ray encountered was the main power being out. The emergency lights cast their red glow throughout the facility, creating unsettling shadows in corners and alcoves. He tried the landline in the office, dead. His cell phone showed no service, which was strange. Reception was usually excellent here. "Miguel," Ray called out, his voice echoing slightly in the empty building. "You still here, man?" No answer. The security system was offline, another peculiarity. The screens were dark, the recording equipment powered down. Ray made a mental note to check the backup generator. It should have kept essential systems running even during a power outage. Moving through the facility methodically, Ray checked the office, the supply closet, the employee break room. No sign of Miguel. Finally, he approached the tunnel itself. The emergency lights within the tunnel were functioning, but they'd shifted somehow. Instead of the standard red, they gave off a pale blue illumination that Ray had never seen before. Probably some weird interaction with the water vapor in the air, he reasoned. Reflections or refractions or something scientific like that. He stepped into the tunnel cautiously. The machinery was off, the massive brushes hanging motionless from their mounts. Water pooled on the concrete floor, reflecting the strange blue light. "Miguel," he called again. "You in here?" As he approached the far end of the tunnel, Ray saw something that made him stop in his tracks. The maintenance closet door stood open, items from the shelves scattered across the floor as if someone had been searching frantically for something. And there, in the middle of the small space, a section of the concrete floor had been removed, revealing a dark opening and what looked like an old metal hatch, thrown wide open. Ray had worked at Starlight Express for 5 years, since shortly after it opened, and he had never known there was anything beneath that floor. He approached carefully, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up for reasons he couldn't articulate. A faint chemical smell rose from the opening, unpleasant but not overwhelming. He peered down into the darkness but could see nothing. "What the hell?" he muttered to himself. "Miguel, if this is some kind of joke," but even as he said it, Ray knew this was no joke. Something was very wrong. He pulled out his flashlight and shone it down into the opening. The beam revealed what appeared to be an old storage room, much older than the current building, concrete walls discolored with age and stained by what might have been chemical lakes, empty metal shelving units rusted almost beyond recognition, and the remnants of plastic containers long since deteriorated to brittle shells. And there, slumped against one wall, was Miguel. "Jesus Christ," Ray scrambled forward, nearly falling into the hole himself. "Miguel, can you hear me?" No response. Miguel's eyes were closed, his body motionless. But from Ray's position, he couldn't tell if his colleague was breathing. Ray knew he should wait for help, call fire and rescue, hazmat maybe, given the chemical smell. But if Miguel was still alive, every minute might count. He had to get down there. Carefully, Ray lowered himself into the opening. It was about a 6-foot drop to the floor of the old storage room. He landed awkwardly but kept his balance. The air was stale, thick with dust and chemical residue. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness as he hurried to Miguel's side. "Miguel." "Hey, Miguel." Ray knelt beside him, pressing fingers to his neck to check for a pulse. To his immense relief, he found one, weak but steady. Miguel's skin was cool to the touch, but not cold. He was alive. Ray gently shook his shoulder. "Miguel, come on, man. Wake up." Miguel's eyelids fluttered. Slowly they opened, revealing eyes that seemed to reflect the strange blue light from above more intensely than they should have. He looked at Ray without recognition at first, then awareness dawned gradually. "Ray," his voice was a hoarse whisper. What time is it?" "Almost 6. "Morning shift. What the hell happened?" "What is this place?" Miguel's eyes darted around the storage room, taking in the deteriorated shelving, the chemical stains on the walls. "They're gone," he said. "It worked. They're free." "Who's gone?" "Free from what?" "Miguel, you're not making sense." Miguel struggled to sit up straighter, wincing with the effort. "The children. The ones who died here. In the old car wash. You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Ray's expression changed, a shadow crossing his features. "Children. What do you know about that?" Something in Ray's tone made Miguel look at him more closely. You know about it. About what happened here. Ray was silent for a long moment, his face unreadable in the harsh beam of the flashlight. Finally, he sighed heavily. My grandfather owned the original car wash on this property. Sunshine Walk. There was an incident in '93. 5 kids found in a chemical storage room, dead from exposure to industrial-grade cleaning agents. It was ruled an accident. Miguel stared at him in shock. Your grandfather was Jenkins. The owner, Ray, nodded grimly. Raymond Jenkins, Sr. My namesake, though I'm not proud of it. He was not a good man. Cut corners everywhere he could. Used illegal chemicals because they were cheaper. Never secured them properly. He paused. The official story was that the kids broke in after hours. But I found my grandfather's journal after he died. The truth was he'd hired one of the boys, Edward, to help around the place off the books. Paid him under the table. The kid had his own key. Edward, Miguel whispered. Tall kid about 12, Ray's eyes widened. How could you possibly know that? There were never any photos in the news reports. The families kept it private. Miguel tried to stand, but found his legs wouldn't support him. Ray helped him lean against the wall. You're going to think I'm crazy, Miguel said. But they were here tonight. All 5 of them. Edward, June, Thomas, Michael, and Lily. They're spirits, ghosts, whatever you want to call them. They've been trapped here since they died. Under normal circumstances, Ray would have dismissed such a claim immediately. But the evidence was hard to ignore. This hidden room that no one knew about, Miguel found inside it, reciting the names of children who had died 3 decades ago. Let's get you out of here first, Ray said. Then you can tell me everything. With considerable effort, they managed to get Miguel back up through the hatch opening. Once in the tunnel proper, Miguel's strength seemed to return somewhat. Ray supported him as they made their way toward the office. They said the chemicals bound them here, Miguel explained as they walked. That something in those industrial cleaners your grandfather used affected their souls. They couldn't move on. They've been stuck here all this time. Ray processed this information silently. Finally, he asked, why tonight? Why you? They said it was the anniversary. That the veil was thin, whatever that means. And apparently not everyone can see them. They reached the office, and Ray helped Miguel into a chair. In the better light, Ray could see that Miguel didn't look well. His skin pale, dark circles under his eyes, and strangest of all, his irises seemed to have a faint bluish tint that Ray didn't remember from before. We need to get you to a hospital, Ray said. Those chemicals are decades old, but still dangerous. You've been exposed, Miguel shook his head. Not yet. There's something else you need to know. He took a deep breath. Your grandfather's journal, did it mention what happened to the chemicals afterward? After the kids died, Ray's expression darkened further. That was the worst part. To avoid liability, he never reported the actual chemicals involved. When the property was sold, he just sealed up that room and didn't tell anyone it was there. The new owners built right over it, never knowing. Those chemicals have been down there all this time, Miguel said. leaking off-gassing, and the children's spirits were bound to them somehow. That's why they couldn't leave. I had to open the hatch, release the chemicals fully to set them free, and in the process you exposed yourself, Ray said. Miguel, that was incredibly dangerous. Some of those chemicals were borderline toxic waste. We need to get you to a doctor, Miguel nodded weakly. Soon, but first we need to report this. That room needs to be properly decontaminated. If those chemicals have been leaking for 30 years, who knows what damage they've been doing? Ray pulled out his cell phone. To his surprise, it now showed full service. He dialed emergency services and reported finding a hidden chemical storage room beneath the car wash. When asked if anyone had been exposed, he looked at Miguel questioningly. Miguel shook his head slightly. No, Ray told the dispatcher. But the situation needs immediate attention. After ending the call, Ray turned to Miguel. Why didn't you want me to tell them you were exposed? Miguel's gaze was distant, as if he were looking at something Ray couldn't see. Because I'm not sure what happened to me down there. I'm not sure what I am now, what you are. What does that mean? Before Miguel could answer, the main power flickered back on. Lights blazed throughout the facility, the security systems rebooted with electronic chirps, and the tunnel machinery hummed as it reset itself. The security monitors came to life, cycling through their camera feeds. Ray glanced at them absently, then did a double take. What the hell? On the screen showing the tunnel interior, 5 small figures stood in a line, children, their features indistinct but recognizable as 3 boys and 2 girls. They were looking directly at the camera, and even through the grainy footage, their eyes seemed to glow with a faint blue light. That's impossible, Ray breathed. The system just rebooted. This has to be old footage. It's not, Miguel said calmly. They're still here. Or part of them is. But they're different now. Free to leave if they want to. Free to stay if they choose. As they watched, the children on the screen raised their hands in unison, a farewell gesture. Then they faded from view, the image returning to normal, just an empty car-washed tunnel. Ray turned to Miguel, questions forming on his lips, but the words died as he saw Miguel's eyes. The blue tint had intensified, a subtle glow emanating from them in the dimness of the office. What happened to you down there? Ray asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Miguel smiled faintly. I helped them, and they helped me. They kept their promise. He rose from the chair with surprising steadiness. I need to go home now. Rest, but I'll be back tonight for my shift. You can't work tonight. You need medical attention, time to recover. I'll be fine, Miguel assured him. Better than fine. And this place, it needs a night manager who understands what it really is. What happened here? The children have moved on, mostly. But this place will always be thin, a membrane between worlds. Ray didn't understand fully, but something in Miguel's calm certainty silenced his objections. He watched as his colleague walked steadily toward the door. Miguel paused at the threshold, looking back. For just a moment in the play of light and shadow, Ray thought he saw other figures clustered around Miguel, small, childlike forms that moved with him as he turned. They deserve to be remembered, Miguel said. Edward, June, Thomas, Michael, and Lily. Maybe now they can rest. Maybe now their story can be told. Then he was gone, the door swinging shut behind him. Ray stood alone in the office, trying to process everything that had happened. Outside, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. The darkness was receding, but Ray knew that some shadows never truly disappear. They just change form, becoming something else, something that exists in the spaces between what we know and what we fear to understand. He turned back to the security monitors. The cameras showed an empty facility, the lot, the vacuum stations, the office where he now stood, the tunnel. All normal, all as they should be. Except for one detail that made his blood run cold. In the camera feed showing the tunnel, a single child-sized footprint was visible on the wet concrete floor. And as Ray watched, it slowly dried and vanished, as if it had never been there at all. In the distance, barely audible over the hum of machinery, came the sound of children laughing. You made it to the end of the stories. That means it's the perfect time to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you haven't already, leave a like and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great time relaxing, and good night.